Take a 2 hour experience of eye opening, mind expanding, revealing common sense discussion for the common sense citizen. Strap yourself in, put your trays in the upright position, remove dentures and loose jewelry, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and come along for the ride. It is time for the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Powerhouse Station WCRN 830, and our affiliates and streaming on the TuneIn app. It's Joe time, baby.
All right, folks. All right, folks. Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Our affiliates live streaming on the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN. You can even tell, hey, Alexa, play WCRN. She'll do that. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page. Go to Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. Matter of fact, Joe Mangi Show is our handle for all of our social media platforms, including the ones shut down, like Parler. That's right. They keep telling us that they're coming back, and they let the president of that go. We can talk about that in more detail a little later. But the alternative platforms, of course, you know what we did with this Section 230 that the Congress gave to these companies in their infant stage allowed them to become monopolies and buy up or crush any competition. Whole nother conversation. You can join the conversation, a matter of fact, at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000 to join the conversation anytime. And you can text us on our text line. That is 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. Or, if you can't text but you have a device and you can email, you can also email textjoe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen. And you can reach the show off air, and this is how most of you communicate, either through the messenger, by the way, which is fine, or at JoeMShow at gmail.com. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
You looking fresh with the new haircut?
Yep.
Very nice.
Had to change it up.
Yeah?
I've been growing it out since, I think my last haircut was December of 2019, so.
Did you go to a barber?
Yeah.
All right. What did they do? Because when I've gone to the barber during the pandemic, let me see if they do the same thing. What was the routine?
So you had to text them when you got there. They'd let you know when you could come in. And then this person had her own chair, like, just in a room by itself. So, but yeah, same thing. Keep the mask on the whole time.
Right. So I put the mask on. He taped it so he could take the earpieces off.
Yep.
Right. So it's cleared the ear area. But it's taped on my nose and on my side, so the mask is taped to my face, not up by the strings. And this guy, he's Vietnamese. He's over the years I've gone to him. Fascinating family story about them getting out of Vietnam and so forth. But I'm not going to get into that. But John, he's on Hamilton Street, and he looked like he was from casting in a B movie when they want to get the mad scientist and they have the rubber apron and the face shield, right? And then the little hat thing and the glove. I mean, he looked like he came from Central Casting for a movie. I'm like, seriously? Whatever. Yep. But, so you have to wait out in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And only one person into the barbershop at a time and that kind. And he's the only guy working. All the other, like, 4 chairs, all of those guys just have taken whatever was available and just stopped working, period. And John is just a hard worker. Even when he goes on vacation, this guy takes his appointment book with him. And the other guys, and they're younger guys, right? And they kind of give him a hard time for that. But guess what? He's booking appointments while he's down on the beach in Florida or Bahamas or whatever. And he comes back to a full schedule. And these guys aren't doing that, and they're not working. And he said, the expression, I guess, in barbers is your chair. You build up your chair. That's how they describe it, right? So it takes 4 or 5 years for a barber to build their chair up, meaning that they have these repeat customers and there's a schedule. They come back. He said they're going to lose their chairs. Not physically lose them. They're still their chairs and stuff, but they're going to lose the book of business because they're not cutting hair, and all these people are going to find alternatives. And a lot of times, right, when you find a new barber and you like him, do you go back? Yeah, I
Yep.
usually, yeah. Anyway, interesting. But your haircut looks good. What are you doing for the big game?
I'm going to a small get together.
Okay.
Just with it's just my old roommate and one more person.
Who are you guys cheering for?
Tom Brady.
All right.
God, it gotta go Brady.
Right.
That's
It's more Brady than Buccaneers.
Oh yeah, that's how I describe it. Anyways, I'm cheering for Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are doing that, and going for that. But what it is, it's like a 20-year age difference between the quarterbacks, right? I mean, he's in his early 40s, and I don't know how old the other guy is, right? But I mean, this is going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be a fun game to watch, and of course, we're doing it all COVID-minded this time. And normally, I go to a big blowout party, but I don't even know if they're doing it, to tell you the truth. Anyway, folks, if you call us, let us know how you're doing your Super Bowl Sunday. And now the latest thing out, right? They started talking about multiple masks, and then we're hearing that even once we're all vaccinated and we've reached this herd immunity, that we still got to continue to wear masks because now they're going to scare us with this whole mutation thing. Interesting. It's something's not sitting right with all of that. All right, coming up, today's show is good. So at the bottom of the hour, in the second half of the first hour, we're going to be joined by Scott Garlis. And Scott, he's the editor of Stransberry Newswire Premium, and that's a real-time daily blog where they analyze and scour the market and things of that nature. But he was in the business, 20 years, upstairs on the floor type of thing, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about the GameStop stock situation, what happened there, and just about these stimulus checks. And the thing about these are, and I hope you are just as aggravated with this as I am, because it's not that the money's going out. Look, we force businesses to shut down. We threatened them with fines and even imprisonment if they were to open. So if we do that, I liken that to eminent domain. If we tell you we're going to take your building, and you may have had a gas station there or a sub shop, or it doesn't matter. If the government, i.e. the people, for a greater good, needs your land or your building to put a highway in or beetle back or whatever the situation is, we take it by a process called eminent domain, and we pay you fair market value. Well, if we close your business for the greater good, it's kind of our responsibility to make you whole there. So I get that, and money has to go there. But these stimulus checks, they don't make sense if you think about it across, because we blindly send money out to everybody, including, and this is something, I mean, there are people who are getting it that don't need it. I personally have friends who are retired, and they said, we didn't need it. I mean, we're in retirement. Our retirements are set up, whatever our income is from our, from the Social Security and our investments and insurance policies, they're all paying, nothing changes, doesn't need it. So they really don't care for it. Then I see this article where they said 73% of stimulus money being sent to people, if new money is sent out, is going into savings. 73%. So that says to me, first of all, we haven't spent all the money from the first stimulus checks is still out there. Now we want to send more money out without knowing, A, well, first of all, without all of it being spent, and B, did it work? Does it work? Do we need to give it out? I think we need to do a much higher targeted distribution of funds based on a case by case that they need it. Now you look into this further and you find out that, people who are on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, they're getting stimulus checks. That's nice. It's an extra $1,200, $600. Now President Biden's swearing another $1,400 because that's what was promised, $2,000. Well, and that's a nice bump for them. And I can even be convinced maybe you might as well, because Social Security is a very low amount anyway if you're on SSI or SSDI, and maybe that's worth it. But the point is, they're probably on Section 8 or housing. In other words, it's not going to affect. They're already living their life. Their income didn't change. And that's the same with retirees. And then we find out that prisoners are also getting the stimulus checks. And that makes no sense whatsoever if you are a ward of the state and you're staying at one of our fine institutions here in the Commonwealth. We're already feeding you. We're housing you. You get medical attention. You're in prison. Where are you going to spend your stimulus check? Where are you going to spend $2,000? In the canteen? So why would that happen? Then I had mentioned this yesterday. So on our text line, I get sent another article, and they say, hey, during the first hour, you mentioned how prisoners are receiving stimulus checks. Well, it's much worse than that. So a story from CBS comes on, and $140 million in fraudulent unemployment claims made on behalf of thousands of California prison inmates, prosecutors say. So 35,000 unemployment claims fraudulently made on behalf of prison inmates between March and August, costing taxpayers $140 million. They've been paid out in benefits. Now, the Sacramento County District Attorney called it one of the biggest fraud of taxpayer dollars in California history. And there was even, and you probably remember this name. Do you remember the name? Cam Scott Peterson? Remember he was convicted, murder?
Yep.
Yep. So he even got the money. So this, to me, is just a huge mistake. We're running up the debt, the collective debt of the nation, and we're not, we're mortgaging, right? Our not just our grandchildren, our children, grandchildren, but great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. When you have trillions of dollars of debt, and I think the problem is we're getting to the point where people can't even envision, because we're talking not in billions anymore, we're talking in trillions. Just how much money that is and how long and what it's going to take to get out of the hole. And we've got to target that money. We'll talk to Scott Garlis about this a little bit when we get to the 6:30 break after that. And then actually, coming up at 7 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Major General Mari Eder. She's a retired Army general, right? She was Deputy Chief of Public Affairs, and she has a new book out, American Cyberscape, Trials and the Path to Trust. So she wrote this book, and we're going to talk about security, and we're going to talk about, well, just the whole cyber scene going on. She has a book out there, and I got to tell you, she's going to be interesting. All right, she's going to be interesting. So that's what's up for the rest of the show, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. In the meantime, and I didn't get to get into this yesterday. I started to, but the show went very quickly, and we didn't hit a lot of it. But one of the things, and we know, look, President Biden, right, has come in with record number of executive orders in a very short amount of time. And that's not what executive orders were meant to be. That's not how they're meant to be used. Yes, I know the argument, every president has used them. I get that. I'm not saying they haven't. And I'm not saying that, depending where you are in the spectrum, right? Because if you're Democrat, you're going to talk about Trump and Bush, and if you're Republican, you're going to talk about Clinton and Obama. I get all that. All presidents have used them. But they've used them a little more discerningly than Joe Biden is doing this. I mean, we're talking about them coming in the first few days or first couple of weeks, 4 or 5 executive orders. And yeah, mainly they were things that they said they were going to do right away and they ran on. I get that. That's fine. I think, for example, Clinton in his first week in office, he had 2 executive orders. And Bush, his first 2 weeks in office, he only had 2 executive orders. In Obama, his first week in office, he did 5. In Trump, in his first week, he did 4. Biden is pushing 50 now in a couple of weeks in office. So remind me again which president governs as a dictator. It's funny because if you really look at so far Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, you have people, it's the opposite. See, look at the deed. Trump was boisterous, right? Loud and obnoxious in the tweets, and he would come after people who came after him and, you know, come out swinging and all of that, and everybody, oh, that's not presidential and this is that. But if you look at his deeds, they're pretty moderate. And they were pretty much enforcing laws that already existed. When you go back and you look, he didn't put any new laws in, say, in immigration. He just asked that the laws that were on the books be enforced. He just said, we have a border. We have a legal way to enter the country. I just want that to happen. There was nothing really outlandish. He just enforced, whereas Joe Biden is very quiet and much more subdued. But look at his deeds. He's satisfying the left big time right now. Everything, you know, from stopping building on the border wall, which is in process. The money's been allocated, money's been spent, contracts have been signed. What's to be gained by this? We're still in a pandemic. And this has created a surge at the border. We have caravans coming and headed because the message they've gotten from Joe Biden is, come on up. You're going to get access to the country and you're going to get free health care, free COVID medication. Come on. Meanwhile, we have, if they weren't immigrants migrating to the United States and you had thousands of people traveling on top of each other without any PPE, the media would call that a super spreader. If those were a bunch of Republicans or conservative people, they'd be all over them for it. But for some reason, it's okay for them to travel and to let people who have not been screened into the country. When we go back and we look at the Border Patrol and they talk about the walls that have been put up, and what are we looking at? 400 and something miles, 437 miles of the wall built. So again, Donald Trump has delivered on his promises that he said, but they're telling us what the numbers are. We're talking 70, 80% drop in border crossings when the wall went up. Walls work. If walls don't work, neither do wheels. It's that simple, folks. But one of the things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the left want to do, and there's momentum in this, right? This is picking up, folks, and this is why it's scary. And I want to know how you feel about this, and that is canceling student debt. Right now, they're calling for $50,000 per student. That's millions and millions of dollars. First of all, where does the debt go when it's canceled? Who pays for it? Who pays for it? The banks aren't going to pay for it. The schools aren't going to pay for it. So if you cancel the debt, who's absorbing that? Who pays for that? There's no such thing as a free lunch, and there's no such thing as a free education. So why would we cancel this? This is the cycle that we get into. over the last few decades, right, this government has increased these student loans and backed them up and made the money really available and really convinced everybody that they need to go to higher education. They didn't put any emphasis on trade schools or other options. You know the Five Guy burgers? Cam, you like Five Guy burgers?
Yeah, pretty good.
Excellent burgers. Great company, right? Way back when they were first hitting the area, I got to know the guy who owns a lot of the way they do this is you buy territories. It's a franchise. This guy, Mark, right? He owns all these, the Worcester and the Natick Framingham down in Rhode Island. And we covered this on and Up with Joe before. And what it was is the sons and the father. And the father gathered his sons and he said, look, I have X amount of dollars. And I can send you to college. You guys go to school. And this is how much you each get to put towards your college education. Or you can start a business. The sons thought about it, discussed it among themselves, and said, we want to start a business. And they started Five Guys, and that's why it's called Five Guys, father and the four sons. And it was in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania somewhere. They started, and it did well. It did great, right? And that's why and then, oh, by the way, it was Bill Clinton. It was Bill Clinton stopped at one of their locations. They had like 3-4 locations, right? Just they all owned them. They were the brothers. He stopped in on the campaign trail once and had a Five Guys burger. And that's sent them through the roof, right? So they went from a nice little family business to a nationwide name. The whole country knew Five Guy Burgers because Bill Clinton stopped there for a burger. And the rest is history. They ended up franchising and became this big business. So the point is, because I got off track here about education, we've convinced or we've brainwashed our children into thinking that they've got to go and get a college education. And then even we've convinced them that it has to be a certain name school, right? It has to be an expensive education to be good. And then we saddle them with this debt. And you're supposed to go to college and be able to get a job to pay off your student debt. Do you carry any student debt loan?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
What's your average? What do you pay? Because I'm going to tell you what the averages
are. Around $500 a month.
Damn.
Somewhere around there.
Okay, really? All right.
Not that full amount. I guess I'm trying to save up to pay more, but that's what I'm putting away.
You're talking about okay, that's a car payment easy. The average student debt is $398. Do you know the average used car payment is $381? We'd be better off to pay off the car debt because at least it would do something. For one, they'd probably use the car to get to work. We'd probably be better off doing that. You get a degree and you're supposed to be able to get a job that can pay that off. And if you become a surgeon or a doctor or a pretty good lawyer, yeah, you're probably going to make the money. But if your degree is in art history, and I'm not cranking on people in art history, I'm just saying that's not on its face value a very marketable, transferable degree. You can only have so many curators at a museum, right? So who's responsible for that? Who's paying this? Do you remember the guy that got on Elizabeth during the presidential when she was still in the race, got on her about this? And he wanted to know who's going to pay him back because he did it right. He worked 2-3 jobs, all the overtime he could to put his daughter through school. And now you're just going to come and pay off people's debt? And he did it right. He paid the debt off. He worked his butt off to pay those college tuition bills. And now, where is the fairness in this? What about the people who paid it off? What about the people who, because they did not want to be saddled with a $100,000 or $200,000 debt, didn't go to college? If you knew it wasn't going to cost you anything, wouldn't you have gone to the school of your liking? So we get in this cycle where we made this money available, and what do the universities do? They crank up the tuition. Tuition has increased at a higher rate than anything else, inflation or anything else. A ridiculous amount of tuition increase. It's just off the chart because they get it. They get paid. Meanwhile, these institutions have endowments in the millions and billions of dollars. Look at Harvard, $50 billion or some ridiculous amount, where they could run their entire school all year long without taking a penny of tuition. But they're still taking $62,000 a year. So I'm sorry, I don't know where you sit on this, 508-871-7000, but it is not up to the taxpayer to take care of your college debt. And I know, one of the arguments, well, why don't we have free community college? Just you go through high school, right? And then if you want, you just go to community. And that's fine, but that's not free. Are those teachers working for free? Are the custodians who have to clean the hallways working for free? The cafeteria people, the administrators, the secretary? Nothing's free. Should there be some price controls on tuition? And that's exactly what these universities did, people, is they increased it not because they needed to, it's because they could. And then we know people like Elizabeth Warren getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach one course. There's a lot of money in these universities, and they're saddling with the tuitions of these kids, and they're giving them a debt that they carry for a good portion of the rest of their lives. Should there be a guarantee that comes with them if you can't pay off your tuition? You get it back? I mean, it's crazy stuff. All right, folks, we got to take a break here for the bottom of the hour. I think we're out with Joe, Find Your Forever Home. When we come back, we will come back on the other side, and we'll be talking with Scott Garlis, editor of the Strandsbury Newswire, on the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al. Tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing Bundt Cake Shrewsbury. All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the first segment of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Look, we have had a lot of talk about the GameStop and the stock and what was going on there, the stimulus money and the conversation there, and about targeting and where that money should go. So I thought that I'd invite Scott Garlis to join us. He is the editor of Stansbury Newswire and Stansbury Newswire Premium. Hey, he has spent 20 years trading. He puts out this daily blog about stocks and researching for the average investor, and I think he can bring a lot to the table. Let me invite into the conversation at this point Scott Garlis. Scott is the editor of Stansbury Newswire and Stansbury Newswire Premium. Scott, first of all, good morning, and thank you for getting up so early on a Sunday morning, especially Super Bowl Sunday. I'm sure you have a lot of plans to get done today.
Yeah. Hey, Super Bowl Sunday, and guess whose name's out there again? Tom Brady.
Yes. It's a name we've heard here in the Boston area from time to time. Of course, a lot of people here are going to be having a very tough time seeing Brady on the field without the New England Patriots uniform on.
Yeah, I get it. I live just outside of Baltimore. I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, and I have the utmost respect for Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and what they did all those years. But I have to be honest, as a Ravens fan, I'm happy to not see Tom Brady wearing a Patriots jersey.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the guy is a machine. He's got nearly 20 years seniority on his opposing quarterback. But when it comes to Tom Brady, we've learned, you can't really go by the norms, and you can't even go by the bookmakers, right? They didn't even know how to handle Brady in Vegas. That's great, but let me get back to the reason I invited you to join me, and again, thank you for joining us so early. I know it's a tough thing to get up, but we've had a lot of talk lately about the market and day trading, and you spent 20 years on the floor trading, or is it more? Right, 20 years trading, 20 years in the stock market.
Yeah, basically. So it wasn't exactly the floor. It was so the floor is called downstairs. I'm upstairs, but. Yeah, so what I did was I dealt with a lot of institutions.
That's very Downton Abbey of you.
I'm sorry?
That was very Downton Abbey of you.
Yeah. So I dealt with a lot of institutions, basically hedge funds and mutual funds for the bulk of my clients. So I covered some of the biggest things. So it was I've seen a lot of interesting stuff, and this was certainly interesting in a couple of weeks.
Well, what we saw is, and this is, I think, what the perception was that was going on out there is, you have day traders, just average everyday citizens playing with some of their money, and we'll talk about where that money might come from in a minute, but they're playing with it, but they're using these apps, right? Everything is an app today, Scott, and Robinhood, and I think there are a couple others out there that were kind of using the platform to give direction and tell people what to invest in and so forth, and the perception is that these apps started to tell everybody to go after the hedge funders and drive the stock up for GameStop because they went short. Two questions. Is that what was going on? Is that an accurate description of what the perception is? And then what really was going on?
Yeah, so that is accurate. So what it was like this Reddit forum, Wall Street Bets. So when I was working with institutions on Wall Street, one of the things you would always look at when you look at companies you might be recommending or ideas you were talking about is you would look at the number of days to cover in a stock. And then what days to cover is that shows you the amount of shares that are short versus the amount of shares that are outstanding. And it's based on the average daily trading volume. So let's say you have a stock that has 10 million shares short and it trades 500,000 shares a day. That means on normal business days, it would take 20 days to buy in all of that short. Now, if you bought a stock every day for 20 days, that stock's going up, and it's that can be painful. So these guys on the Wall Street Bets forum and Reddit, my guess would be they have some sort of institutional background because they identified these situations, or they learned from somebody that did, and they went out and found a bunch of these short bets, and that is again a short. In case somebody doesn't know, that's where a hedge fund sells a stock in anticipation of buying it lower, and so they were looking at days to cover, and these shorts that hadn't been bought back in yet. They were still outstanding. And they found these short bets that had high days to cover, and they convinced groups of investors, let's go start buying these stocks to make them painful for these hedge funds that are short them. And that way, when the price gets to a point where they can't take it anymore, they are going to go and they're going to scramble, and they're just going to buy these stocks and drive the prices way higher. And that's basically what happened.
So was this to punish hedge fund managers, or just to get a little bit of the money back from the man?
Yeah, I don't think this was to punish hedge fund managers. They sold it as we're, hey, Wall Street, we're in Wall Street less.
The thing is, I date everything I said.
I think this is sort of like one of the things that Wall Street does well is somebody found an opportunity to make money, and so they said, hey, you know what? If I can make $1, I'm going to go try to make $1, and you can't disrespect them for that. Now, I think part of this too is some of the broader stuff we can get into in a little bit. It's just, I think with all the dollar printing that's gone on because of the pandemic between the Fed and the government, and some of the stimulus stuff being given away, is that, there are people that are sitting, they just have the money that they bring home and they have in their account from the job they do. And as that money becomes worth less and they don't own anything else, they're becoming frustrated. And I think some of these people realize, like, hey, one of the ways I can protect myself is to buy into assets that inflate. When the dollar becomes worth less, they inflate in value. And those are things like stocks, bonds, gold, real estate, cryptocurrency. And they saw this situation as an opportunity to make some money back.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this. Was there anything done illegal here? Because right away, right, we hear from Capitol Hill
Yep. Elizabeth Warren gets out there and these people, they can't do this and they've got to be punished now, and we got to stop this. And what the perception out there is that the average little guy who used the same tactics as hedge fund guys do, made a little bit of money, now the government's going to punish them for this. First of all, did anybody actually do anything illegal here?
Yeah, okay. So whether or not somebody did anything illegal remains to be seen. And I think, the FINRA's looking into it, the SEC's looking into it. I think it's going to take some time, and they're going to dissect this stuff. They're going to look at usernames on all these chat boards, and they're going to have to go back, and they're going to have to find out who that user is, and they're going to find that person. They're probably going to talk to them, call them in, say, hey, look at who they work for, other things like that. They're going to there's a big crumb trail out there, and that takes time, and it could be years before we really know what the answers are. But one of the big things is what you hit on is I know Senator Warren and others were very upset by Robinhood freezing trading on some of these stocks, and the problem there is that Robinhood, like any other brokerage firm, if they do trades and they clear trades through somebody else in particular. What they have is they have a situation where they have capital commitments, they have to meet marginal requirements, just like a retail guy would, but on a bigger basis. And as these stocks run up and they inflate in value, and you have people trading on margin, and those costs go way up. And usually, what these federal companies, like the National Security Clearing Corporation, federal organizations, they have requirements to protect people and organizations from collapsing and financial disaster happening. So they put controls on these things. And I think what happened was, as Robinhood started hitting these controls, margin requirements went up, all sorts of other things happened. They stopped trading on some of these issues, not because a hedge fund was calling them and saying you have to stop trading or something else is going to happen, because they were hitting these capital requirements. And you saw it, I think it was after the first or second night after this happened, Robinhood went out and drew down hundreds of millions of dollars in credit lines. And then like a day or two later, they took down billions of dollars. So that tells me they needed this money to be able to conduct their daily operations because they were having a hard time satisfying these limits.
Got it. So the key here is that it was not the hedge fund managers giving the order to stop trading. It wasn't the government. It was existing safety measures that are in place for the good of everybody and to stop the system from collapsing in on itself.
That is correct.
Okay. So that I think helps explain a lot what happened that day over that couple days, and clarifies it for some people. But let's talk about that money, because you made reference to people having this money sitting there, and a lot of people are having more money sitting there during this pandemic. And let me set that up. What I mean by that is there are people who still continue to get paid, mostly the government employees, right, on the state and local level, continue to get their full pay during this shutdown, but the expense of working has gone away. People are working remotely, and the commute costs money, dining out, eating lunch out costs money, even wardrobes cost money. And I know some of my friends who have been able to save a little more money during the pandemic because the outlay hasn't been there. Then you add the stimulus money has come in, which was kind of found money. So it seems like a lot of people do have money available to them. You were talking a little bit about the Federal Reserve chart. Explain that to our listeners and what that's telling us right now.
Yeah, sure. So, and all the things you just said, I could not agree with more. Like, I barely drive my car. I don't think I filled my gas tank up in 4 weeks.
Exactly. You know how much gas money I've saved? Like, I just haven't had to leave the house. I've done this show sometimes from my own studio, Scott, so I didn't even drive to the station sometimes,
Not to mention, like, I love caffeine. In particular, I love cappuccino. And so I would drink like 3 a day, and that's $15 a day pretty much in my pocket. That adds up after a year.
Yeah. A couple of weeks of that, you can have a beautiful cappuccino machine at home.
Exactly.
There you go.
That's exactly right. Again, so the Federal Reserve, the St. Louis Federal Reserve in particular, they have a statistic they keep. It's called M1 money supply. And what that is that's the most tangible sort of assets or most liquid assets that households have. Just think about like checking and savings accounts. One of the really interesting things that has happened during the pandemic is that has exploded. I mean, literally exploded, almost doubled to its highest levels ever. And I know that's hard for people to believe, but all of the things you just talked about people, you don't have to buy new clothes to go to work. You don't have to buy coffee. You don't have to buy gas. You're not dining out. That's all that much more money sitting in people's pockets. And then you throw stimulus money on top of that. That just, it's adding up. And again, to your point, I've spoken to people that, they're buying Pelotons, they're investing in the stock market, they're buying cryptocurrencies with these stimulus checks. They're not hanging on to them to make sure they can make their mortgage or rent payment.
Right. Plus, now I read an article about a very high percentage of the future stimulus checks people say are going to go into savings. So my question has been, and I brought this up before in the show, so my listeners are going to know what I'm talking about, and that is, why are we blindly sending stimulus checks out, even to people who don't necessarily need them? Because just for the reasons we talked about, people are still getting their pay. Why do they need them? People who are on even SSI or SSDI, nothing changed for them. I mean, their life is set up to that. Did they need the stimulus money? Prisoners, yes, inmates in prison get a stimulus check where, they're already housed and fed and covered medically. Why do they need stimulus checks? What is the reasoning behind that? Just blindly send these checks out. Should we not have a targeted system a little bit more? And I think the Republicans were asking for this in one of the versions of the bill, is let's target this. Let's have a means test. Who does need it? Because you've got the situations that we just talked about, these people who are buying the Pelotons or cryptocurrency or just putting it in their savings account. But then you've got the people, mostly say in the service industries, who are struggling. Their business has gone down. They made a decent living, but it was on tips because people were allowed to come into their establishment. They're hurting, right? They're wondering about making rent. They're wondering about how they're going to feed themselves or their family or their children. Those people absolutely need help. So this blind sending the check out, is this counterproductive, and is it working?
Well, so I think you can look at it a couple ways. So like, sort of not quite check, but if we dial it back to the Fed for a second, like what the Fed did in terms of making all this money available back in March, that was paramount. The economic system as we know it in this country would have collapsed, and we would have been looking at like bread lines and Great Depression era type stuff. And so they had to do that, and I understand why they want to continue to keep easy money policies in place so that we don't run into a collapse, and just maybe to make the financial system feel better about itself. The first round of stimulus checks, I get that too. Again, you want to help people. But I think as we moved on to the next round, you're talking about this last round they did in December. It was greater than the support we put out there for the financial system during the financial crisis, which is that brought the economy to its knees, and was just a major systemic problem. And not that this wasn't, but we did a $2.3 trillion stimulus aid back in March. So, now we did another $900 billion, which, and again, there are, the tough part is there are, as you alluded to earlier, there are some people that are in dire need of this stuff. And I think that money would go a longer way, and would be much more economically by targeting those businesses that have been hurt because of coronavirus-related social distancing restrictions, and in particular, cruise lines, airlines, restaurants, hotels, waiters and waitresses. Those are the ones, like you said, that they're really suffering, and they need it much more than people that still have their jobs, they're doing well, they're staying at home, they're not having to commute, and they're making more money probably than they did before. And what's interesting here is Mitt Romney brought this up recently. I believe was it maybe Murkowski from Alaska, that we just approved this $900 billion bill in late December. The effects of that probably really haven't been felt yet. Do we really need to turn around and do another one worth $1.9 trillion so quickly?
Right. Before we talk about hawking our children's futures more, is spend all the money that we've already allocated, because we haven't, and then let's see what happens. Is it working? Right? Get a feel for this before we just keep writing these checks. I mean, so I guess that brings us, Scott, onto the political side of it, right? Joe Biden and the Democrats, what is the political game here? This is how they, in D.C., inside the belt, they think of these terms. It's the political part of it, and they're not really looking at the practical money, dollars and cents part of this.
No, I mean, my only guess as to why, if you were to, okay, forget about the dollars and cents, like you said, and let's dissect it from a political standpoint, is, this is about what's going to happen in 2 years, the midterm election cycle. And my only guess would be that if they're doing this because they want to put money in people's pockets, so that when those people, it comes time to vote again, they're going to be like, hey, these guys are the ones that made me more whole financially, so I want to keep that going.
Which is interesting, because it was Nancy Pelosi who wouldn't let the bill come to fruition while Donald Trump was in office, because she did not want it perceived a win for Trump.
Right.
And Trump wanted to have his name on the checks to make sure people remembered that they got it under him. I mean, the politics of it are there. We got to deal with it. But I think it's pretty terrible that Nancy Pelosi let people suffer because of that reason, just because of the politics of the optics of Donald Trump being the president when those stimulus checks came in, and that there was a bill. But remember, they were also attached, right? The eliminating Section 230 was part of what Trump wanted.
Yep.
And there was immigration issues that they were attaching to this. And this is always the problem, Scott, right? In D.C., they have these addendums and add-ons that they put, and Trump was saying, look, we got to have just a straight-up, and I think McConnell was saying it too, straight-up yes or no vote on the aid, on the stimulus check money, the stimulus check period. Stop loading it up with this other stuff that you'll never get past on its own on a debate on the floor.
Yeah. It's and again back to the other topic you brought up is that what's unfortunate about stuff like that is it's hurting. There are people that really need this stuff that are hurting, and when you drag things like that out, a month, 2 months, 3 months, it's a long time, and it's painful. And you raise an interesting question, like, would the economy be in a better spot right now? That we'll never know. It'll probably, again, that would take years to dissect too,
Right.
but it would seem that maybe a lot of those businesses could be in a much better place. The worry is, what's going to happen to a lot of these restaurants in big cities now, because so many people have moved out and they've moved to the suburbs. And when they've moved out of a big city and bought a house in the suburbs, they're probably not going back. And if they do go back, it's going to be some time.
Right. Interesting, right? Because the lockdowns, the pandemic, there's been all kinds of unintended consequences going on here. Businesses, and I've talked about this before, Scott, and I'm sure you're seeing it, businesses that you would never been able to convince to do remote working, right, to get majority of the people to work from home or work remotely, kind of forced into it, and then they found they kind of like it. Productivity not only stayed where it was, but it even improved in most cases. And they're saying, wow, we can save $33 a square foot, and the brick and mortar need for these huge office buildings, not so much. So people now can decide, I can live more where I want to instead of where I have to. I have to be 20 minutes from the office. I think the trickle-down effect of that's going to be a boom in real estate, and communities are going to have to kind of compete for people to live there, because they can have choices. They don't have to live within 128 or 495. And that's the beltways here in the Boston area, Scott. You're in Baltimore,
right.
so you have the same. You understand what I'm saying. But in other words, they don't have to live 20 minutes out of Boston, 40 minutes out of Boston. Some are willing to come out that far because they get more house and yard for the kids, so dad has no problem spending an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes commuting if he gives his family more. But if you can go wherever you feel like, wherever you want to buy, because you can work from that extra room, which now my realtor friends are telling me everybody is looking to, they want an office or another bedroom, or a little cove, or a space over the garage, because everybody wants a home office now. Well, communities are going to have to now start competing and saying, we have great school systems, and our police and fire are good, and our parks are good. And there's going to be, I think, all kinds of, again, trickle-down effect of the world being turned upside down for a year.
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, how great would it be to wake up and look at the White Mountains every morning, especially like they're snow-covered. I think one of the things we've seen, too, is, and this might be hard for people to believe, but the economy is really in a pretty good spot, and the economy is looking at exploding in the second half of the year. The media really played down, I think, the amount of economic strength we're seeing going into the election, but the housing industry is, to your point, the retail, the residential housing industry is booming. The available supply of houses out there, lowest level since like 1963.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a huge driver for economic growth. The housing industry typically averages between 15 to 18% of national economic output on an annual basis, also known as GDP. So that is a really big thing. You know, the manufacturing data we've seen and the industrial production data we've seen, they're at multi-year highs. It's the service sector that's really lagging. But you know, the thinking there is, so you've got all these people that we've talked about this with M1 money supply. Their bank accounts are going up right now. And then you've got vaccinations starting to roll out, right? All these companies are getting approvals. Supply is going to increase. Johnson & Johnson recently applied for an EUA at the end of last week. You know, and then you had Novavax is out there saying that they're doing a rolling review with the FDA now. So supply is going to explode. More people are going to get inoculated. And by the end of summer, you know, we could look at a situation where all these people that are frustrated with being sort of pent up for a year and change can suddenly go back out and do a lot of things they want to do, and they've got all this extra cash, and guess what? They're going to spend. And I think, so one of the hard parts people have right now with understanding why is the stock market at all-time highs, because those money managers look at situations like this and like, you know what, I need to be invested for what's coming 8 to 10 months down the road.
Right.
Because if I'm buying it when it gets here, it's too late. But if I'm buying it ahead of time, you know, if I want to sell some, I can sell into that. And I think what we're seeing with the advent of things like what happened with GameStop is you're getting a retail investor that's, one, frustrated because their dollars they own are getting destroyed, and they're looking for other ways to supplement their income. And two, I think they're getting smarter and learning these things. And they're seeing some of the same, you know, the roadmap that's laying out in front of us, and they want to take advantage.
Wow. Folks, we're talking with Scott Garlis, and he is, well, are you the editor or do you write for it? Yeah, you're the editor of Stansberry
Yes, sir.
Newswire. Tell our listeners what Stansberry Newswire does and how they can get involved in it.
Yeah, so basically I spent about 22 years Wall Street. I can't remember at this point.
Yeah, they run together, don't they, Scott, right?
Yeah, dealing with hedge funds and mutual funds, and highlighting to them every day sort of what's going on a global macro basis, domestically, and then highlighting individual names and presenting them with ideas and helping them to invest and making their investing roadmap simpler. And so myself and the team of guys that work with me, there's a gal too, we try to do the same thing for retail investors now, and we try to help them understand and make sense of what's going on, to sort of take some of the unease out of investing. And if anybody wants to check it out, you can go to stansberryinvestor.com, sign up for free. You can check out all the free stuff we have. You can check out some of the paid content too. And basically, our firm is there to help the little guy, you know, protect and grow their wealth.
All right, that's fantastic. We're going to put up, or we do have up, your website on my social media pages, the show's Facebook page, and on our Twitter account, and on our blog site. So people just go there. You'll get the links. You can go over and check out Stansberry Newswire. Scott Garlis, and you have, what, 2 partners with this?
Yeah.
And this is something that you're doing. It's a daily blog, so it's up to date. You're on it every day.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
All right, Scott, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule. I know on a Super Bowl Sunday, what's the plans? Are you doing the party? I mean, the social distancing. This is going to be a crazy Super Bowl party, right? Because we weren't that far into the pandemic last February, right? We were just kind of getting hit with it. So we still had Super Bowl parties last February, if I remember correctly. So this is going to be a watered-down party, or what are you doing?
Yeah, we've got a 6 and an 8-year-old. They're pumped up. My son, much to my dismay, is a huge Tom Brady fan. He loved him with the Patriots. He still likes him, so he'll be watching. But we're gonna get some boneless wings and chips and salsa from Chili's, and then I'm gonna cook some burgers, and we're gonna veg.
There you
Four
go.
of us.
There you go.
How about you?
Same thing. It's very watered down. Usually, there's a big friend of mine. They do the big party, right? I mean, blowout party. But the big TV, screen TV, and there's Patriots paraphernalia all over the room all year long, not just for the game. Okay, they're huge Patriots fans, but they can't do that. So it's going to be my nephew-in-laws and my nieces and I think are just going to watch it at my niece's house and take it easy. A very watered-down version. But happy Super Bowl Sunday to you. Enjoy the game. And again, thanks for joining us. And please come back again.
Oh, Joe, thank you, man. I loved it, and I would gladly come back anytime.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Again, folks, that was Scott Garlis. He is the editor of Stansberry Newswire and Stansberry Newswire Premium. Lines are open and available. 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000.
It's time to go out with with Joe.
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Nothing Bun Cakes, White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. And this week, we're going to take a look at, well, lab-grown chicken nuggets. Yes, that's right. Sounds a little Star Trek-y, right? We've all seen the episodes where the replicator just simply creates food out of thin air. Well, KFC will test chicken nuggets made with 3D bioprinting technology. We'll start this in Moscow, Russia. The chain announced has partnered with 3D bioprinting solutions to create a chicken nugget made in a lab with chicken and plant cells using bioprinting. Bioprinting, which uses 3D printing techniques to combine biological material, is used in medicine to create tissue and even organs. The 3D printed chicken nuggets will closely mimic the taste and appearance of KFC's original chicken nuggets, according to the press release anyway. KFC expects the production of 3D printed nuggets to be more environmentally friendly than the production and process of its traditional chicken nuggets. Will mark the first debut of a lab-grown chicken nugget at a global fast food restaurant chain like KFC. Raza Polikova, the CEO of KFC Russia and Commonwealth Independent State, said in the press release that crafted meat products are the next step in the development of our Restaurant of the Future concept. Our experiment in testing 3D bioprinting technology to create chicken products can also help address several looming global problems. We are glad to contribute to its development and are working to make it available to thousands of people in Russia and, if possible, around the world. Although it's not currently widely used in food, lab-grown meat is a heavily researched product that many investors hope will soon be on the market. Memphis Meats, a cell-based meat startup, raised $161 million in its latest funding round, and major investors include CPT Capital, a venture fund that has also backed Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat. KFC announced that it would sell Beyond Fried Chicken at over 50 California restaurants for a limited time after successful tests in Nashville, Atlanta, and Charlotte. So, folks, the future gets another step closer. Someday you might just walk into the kitchen and tell the computer to print you out a little snack. We've suspended the Music Minute for the time being, folks, but check outwithjoe.com for the latest in dining and entertainment news. Out with Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bun Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury, on Facebook at Nothing Bun Cakes Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti for Out with Joe.
You're listening to Out with Joe. Out with Joe. WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
This Find Your Forever Home for Teddy's Friends is brought to us by the Cantiani Insurance with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at CantianiAgency.com. This week's candidate comes to us from the Boston Animal Rescue League. Meet Tyson. This handsome 90-pound guy is about 5 years old and he's neutered a pit bull and terrier. And he came to the shelter when his owner passed away. This friendly goofball is looking for an active home that can provide him with plenty of exercise. He is strong and can play a little rough sometimes, so ideally he would need an experienced dog owner, and to go to a teen adult only home, he could potentially go to a home with another dog that can handle his high energy. He loves running around the yard and rolling around for his belly rubs, and if you think you are this friendly guy's forever home, please check out all the links and details at Teddy Goodpup's Facebook page. Find a forever home is brought to you by the Cantiani Insurance Group with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at 508-791-2088. Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani's has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
Golden Group Roofing is a community brand. From our master lead roofers and industry partners to our clients, every single person represents the Golden Group standard. We strive every day to make your home's needs a priority because Golden Group invests in you and your communities. With unbeatable craftsmanship, customer satisfaction, reasonable pricing, Golden Group Roofing stands above the rest. Having been awarded GAF Master Lead Contractor, Certainty Select Shingle Master, and GAF Energy Certified Solar, Golden Group Roofing is 100% worthy of your investment. Experience the Golden Group difference, where hands protect what matters most. Visit us at goldengrouproofing.com or call us at 508-873-1884. 508-873-1884.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger-looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Joe Mangiacotti Show in the Sunday edition, Super Bowl Sunday, that is, here on AM 830 WCRN, our affiliates, as well as live streaming on the TuneIn app. Don't forget, you can tell Alexa, play WCRN. She'll do that. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page. That's the Joe Mangi Show Facebook page, M-A-N-G-I. So Joe Mangi Show for all of our handles for social media, including those that are currently down, like Parler, which they say will be back up and running eventually. But Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble, right? That's the other YouTube version of it. So we're on all of those. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000 for two-way talk and discussion. Don't forget our text line at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. And to Catherine, who sent a text in during the break, I agree with what you had to say there. She's talking about education, which we were doing in the first hour. School tuitions out of line, and now we're hearing that we're going to forgive student debt. But that's a topic I'm sure we'll visit from time to time. But as promised, let me invite into the conversation our guest for the hour is Major General Mari Edler. So let me invite in General. Good morning. Well, did we lose the General? We're good?
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay. Actually, just so you know, Cam, my call screen's blank, so I don't know if that's a reset or something. Good morning, General. Thank you for joining us early on a Sunday morning, getting up nice and early, although I suspect you're used to that as a career military person.
That is absolutely true, and no longer can I sleep in even if I wanted to.
So it's good. And I know that we had chatted. You have, I'm in studio with Teddy, as most people know, and they follow him. And you have a few four-legged furry friends surrounding you as well.
I do, and I am giving treats as we speak so that there is no barking.
So they stay quiet. Teddy's learned to just, when the microphone's on, he just curls up. And anybody who's watching us streaming on Facebook Live will see him curled up in the chair next to me. He seems to have some kind of sense as to when the microphone's on, just go to sleep, and when the microphone's off, ask Cam. He gets animated, right? Yeah. So I don't know. It's and he's not even trained for that. He just picked that up, I guess, through years of doing this. But let me first of all, congratulations on your book. So you've recently wrote the book American Cyberscape, Trials and the Path to Trust. And that's available at Amazon, and we'll put the link up on my social media, folks, so it's easy to get to. What brought you around to doing this? Well, first of all, let me back up because people should understand your career, Army, U.S. Army retired now, former Army Deputy Chief of Public Affairs. So you were that person in the Army that the media dealt with, and you dealt with the media. And you had played a role in crafting some of the imaging of the United States Army, correct?
Some of it is done by different groups within the Army, so it may be fragmented to some extent. The recruiting commercials and branding is done by a different group. But the public affairs piece has been around since 1928 and exists to provide information and education about what the Army does to the public.
Interesting that how you said it, recruiting and branding, just like any major corporation would have a marketing department who would do their branding. The Army has to do that. I mean, we've seen, a matter of fact, Super Bowl Sunday, right? We've seen some great commercials for the armed services during Super Bowls before.
That's true, and it's always about the next generation.
Yeah.
If you look at our recruiting efforts now, what you see is it's very difficult to attract young people between the ages of 17 and 25 to want to serve in the military. And as we go through the process, what we found over the past several years is that only about 3 out of 10 are even eligible to join.
Really?
For whatever reasons, the others are, they may be overweight, they may have taken Ritalin as a child, they may have other medical issues, that maybe there's some with a criminal record. So there's all types of screening out. And we get to those 3 that are even eligible. One of them, or maybe 2, are probably in college. So it's very difficult to find young people who wish to serve. And I think I'd recommend it. You don't have to stay forever.
Right.
Stay for 18 months, stay for 3 years.
Sure.
Go into the reserve.
Now, does Ritalin exclude you from service later in life if you took it as a child?
I think there is that's one of the things they will look at. They will look at why that was taken, for how long, what it meant. So even if you had a peanut allergy, it would be much the same thing.
Right.
Can we work with you if you have a peanut allergy and take the risk of you having an adverse reaction to eating something with peanuts in it and having to be medevaced out?
Right. Right. And this I'm assuming that all of this deals with being in frontline positions, that in instance of combat, would somebody on insulin would be a problem, right? If they have to take insulin on a regular basis.
Correct. Or if you had braces on your teeth, the same thing.
Yeah. So a lot of this is going to, disqualify you for this. But what about other branches, General? I mean, Air Force, when I think of the Air Force, and I was an Air Force auxiliary, and that's a lot more desk stuff and science, and of course the pilots are a whole different category, right? I mean, they're pretty much you have to be a very good physical specimen to make it as a pilot.
The standards are pretty much the same for all of the armed services. It once you enter, that the physical requirements may differ. Certainly, there are physical fitness tests in each of the services, and they're all different.
You know, in your book,
it was difficult enough for me.
Yeah. Well, in your book, you start off talking a little bit about your childhood, and that's really fun to read and get into. But what was it that, you know, when did you decide to take the path of the military, joining the Army? What brought you to that? And did you ever envision yourself being in the Army as a little girl?
No, I didn't actually think I would ever join the Army.
Yeah.
I was in college, and I had a friend who had already graduated and had joined the Army. Was enjoying the travel, the experiences, the opportunity to learn and do and try different things. And I thought, I could do that. My degree was going to be in English. I didn't want to teach. I wanted to get into what I thought would be the public relations aspect of the military. It was a great way to get started, to get some experience. And that was what brought me to it.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about what you address in this, because we have seen trust erode in our institutions. We've seen trust erode in our Congress. I mean, the congressional approval ratings in the dumper. We've seen the trust in mainstream media become almost, I mean, I don't even know how to measure it. Even trust in our politicians, which, you know, have always been, I mean, it's such a joke, right, that making a joke about an honest politician is kind of Americana. And we just seem to have lost trust everywhere. We recently seen the college admission scandal that rocked the country, and something that a lot of us always figured was kind of there, you know, but now it was thrown in our face, and just how big it was. I mean, we're talking about parents bribing and using influence to get their children in, and just and it's scamming the other. All right, so this not only is the wrong way, but they took away scholarship positions or other positions from other people's kids who deserved it on merit. So they were robbed of that. So our trust in our educational systems have been eroded. And just in hour one, I was talking about the fact that, you know, we're hearing the Biden administration and the left talking about forgiving student debt, right, and paying student debt off, and I'm talking about the inequity of that. That one of the problems that we have is these college institutions have driven up when the government started giving out these student loans and guaranteeing these student loans. They started as an opportunity to raise tuition. And tuition has gone up at a rate higher than anything else, right? The cost of bread, milk, inflation, cars, anything. And there's no guarantees to this. And now they're talking about forgiving debt. And nothing gets forgiven, General, right? I mean, who's going to pay that? Who's going to absorb that? It's going to end up being the taxpayer. So we've seen trust get eroded everywhere. And is it worse now than it's ever been in the history of our nation? And why is it so prevalent? I mean, nobody trusts anybody anymore.
I think that what you see right now is trust is really at rock bottom for macro institutions. Macro meaning business, government, NGOs, and media. And in fact, the media is as low as it's ever been. Trust there is only at something like 41%. There are also other annual polls that look at trust in different segments of those institutions. And in the Army, we always like to look at that poll that would come out in June. There's several, Roper and Pew. And typically the military is fairly highly rated. This year, I think this past year, it was at 74%. The only segment higher than that was small business. So why would the military be rated highly in terms of trust? my opinion, it's a values-based institution that is self-policing. So we trust it to do what it should to take care of problems internally. Have there been people within the military who've done things they shouldn't? Absolutely. And as there are in every one of these segments. But it's what is done to correct, remove, retrain, or ensure it doesn't happen again that is important in each one of these. We need to see when corrective action is taken. When you mention Congress, Congress is typically the lowest rated. I believe this last time around it was at 11%. But if you go back in history, we've always had problems. We've just been on this long, slow decline.
Yeah.
And part of that we can ascribe to perhaps the speed of information, the negativity in what we see in the news media, in the traditional news media, rush to judgment, and certainly over the past 10 years or so at least, an increasing focus on celebrities. That isn't news to me. I don't care what celebrities do.
I love that. I have always said about celebrities, and they're it's a huge industry, right? I mean, I also think fashion is kind of a joke too, but the celebrity news, people are, look, when Tom Cruise is worried about who I'm sleeping with or where I'm vacationing, maybe I'll care about what he's doing. I couldn't care less about the celebrities in it. But there are networks, right? Like Bravo or something. I mean, where they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it's all on pop culture and celebrity news. And I never got that. To me, it's a house of cards. In the big picture, what is going to be there? But I want to back up for a second when you were talking about military and self-policing and standards. And I'd like to get your take on and your opinion on the recent situation, first of all, with our members of Congress accusing United States soldiers, and granted National Guards, but they take the same oath and they wear the same uniform, General, that they somehow were compromised or couldn't do their job, and now they're kind of targeting and vetting, and they sent, I think, 12 soldiers home because of posts that they made or things they liked on social media, and now the Secretary of the Service is saying we're going to have a 60-day stand down so that we can look at insurrection in the ranks. Do you find that offensive?
The stand down is looking at extremism. Is there any of that within the ranks in the military? And this goes back as far as 1995 when there were, I believe, several killings made by young soldiers against members of the public because they didn't agree with their politics or how they appeared. So I don't think it is offensive to look. These are all young people we're talking about between the ages of 17 and 25. They have taken the oath, they have come into the military, but they're still, when they take the uniform off, they're still young people.
Yeah.
So they still watch some of those shows that you and I don't. Or they still have the same likes and dislikes. And they may have extremely strong politics that come from their families or their background, where they grew up, their friends. And that comes with them. Everything about their lives and their culture comes with them into the military, regardless of their active duty, reserves, or in the Guard. So I don't think it's unusual to have taken a look at how do you feel about this mission. Yes, you raised your hand. You said you will do whatever you are required to do, but we want to know that you're doing it as best you can. So I don't know the details of what was found.
Right.
I can only imagine that, okay, let's just take a step back and make sure that we have everybody here who is terrifically focused on what this mission is.
Got it. Now, you mentioned that military in the latest poll is 74%, which sounds good compared to Congress at 11%, and that small businesses tend to be or were a little higher. And I'd like to know what's the distinction between that small business and large corporations, because we just learned that Bank of America, not under court order, not because they were asked by any intelligence agency or law enforcement agency, but they decided to go through their own customers' bank accounts, credit cards, debit cards, and to see if they were in the D.C. area, in and around the 6th, and what they spent their money on, if they traveled, and looking at those records. That, I haven't been a Bank of America customer for years, but that's because I had a large marketing company, and I dealt with them as a business person, and they were horrible, and their fees, right, were ridiculous, and so I stopped doing business with them. But if I was a Bank of America customer today, and I found that they were, realized that they were going through my records to study and examine my life and what I did or chose to do, that would upset me. That would bother me. Even though I know that information is sitting there, of course it's sitting there. I can go online, pull up my credit card, I can pull up my bank account, I can look at my own activity. Obviously they can too. But to specifically go on some kind of a hunt to see what I was doing, or if I did anything in around January 6th and the day of the Capitol incident, that's going to be undermining trust.
I think the question you're getting at is, are these publicly accessible records? Now, banks are in this poll right at about 38%, so probably in the middle of the pack. So they're not rated that highly. But we have great concerns about privacy with our data and who sees it, who has access to it, how it is used. And that's why we're starting to see things like the data protection law that was enacted in California several years ago. It's not as strong as the one in the European Union, but I think we're going to see more of that because we need it. With every advance we have technologically, it's the Wild West, until we realize, this thing that was invented for good can also be used for bad. And so we must need to make sure that it can't be, or we need to regulate it in some way. Yeah. So large tech companies right now are coming belatedly to that recognition that, well, what should we be doing? Now, you might want to comment about them removing former President Trump from Twitter. Is that too extreme? I think that if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Mm-hmm. So that they didn't know how to do anything else or do it more surgically, or to, I think, enact any type of disciplines within their structure without going too far. Yeah. So I think we will see some of this begin to, the boat tip too far in one direction, and hopefully we'll see it right itself. Right. So what we have seen is companies taking action that maybe that should be government, maybe that should be in some other institution to do this, and to do it better.
Well, two things. One is we ourselves, right, we often give away our privacy, and we might not realize it because terms of service, right, when we sign up for our cell service, or we download an app, or even open a banking account, we tend to check those boxes, General, very quickly. I really don't think too many of us sit there for 48 minutes to read line by line our terms of service. And when we agree to all of these and we download the apps, we really don't know what we're agreeing to and just how much we're giving up. So that's first one issue, is we voluntarily surrender a lot of our privacy on a regular basis. And when we come to Twitter and Facebook and these social media platforms, and I'll give you a quick background here. Anybody that that listens to my show and follows me knows I've been talking about and screaming about Section 230 for a long, long time, and that these companies, these internet-based companies, they were given this exemption of Section 230 back in the beginning days because we didn't quite understand the internet, and we didn't really understand what it was going to become at that time. and we felt that they needed that exemption to grow and to survive. But now we're at a point, I think, that they have to make the decision as to, are you a platform or are you a publication? And like you said, they could have done this a lot more surgically, but this is how they know. This is all that they know. And I wonder how you view this. You're coming from a public relations background, being in the position that you've been, writing the book that you write. Should the social media giants have to make a decision? And do they have the right to censor speech to the way? And it's not blind. It's clearly biased in one direction. I mean, the same things are the same reasons that they have either shadow banned or restricted or even closed certain conservatives off. They haven't applied those rules to left or Democrats. And when they do it, sometimes they always make a mistake, right? They tell us, oh, that was a mistake. But it's always a mistake against the Republican congressman, not the Democratic congressman. What is the answer? How do we handle these giant, when they have a tremendous amount? Talk about privacy. We have no privacy with these companies. If I send you a text and I even mentioned, I don't know, my coffee machine broke down, by the way. I was late because my coffee machine wasn't working. For the next 3 weeks, I'm going to have pop-up ads about coffee machines. We know this, right? They're reading everything that, not somebody sitting in a dark room, but their algorithms, their AI is reading our emails, scanning them for these words, and tying it all back in. Should we be concerned with these giant tech companies?
Well, we have every right to be concerned because most people look at platforms as being no different from, any other type of media. They don't see the difference. If there is news on a platform, it is responsible.
Yeah.
And I think that tech companies have a hard time coming to that realization of responsibility. So our concern and what we have to continue to press for is, you may not sell my data, you may not collect data from me without my permission, but we are all subject to other types of spies. If we carry the phone in our pocket, it tracks our movement. The Fitbit can show where you are, just like GPS or the Easy Pass in your car.
Yeah.
Games you download or play online can show where you are, what type of keystrokes you hit. And again, that can affect what ads you see too.
Yeah. General, we're against the clock. Can you stay on through the break and we'll continue with this on the other side?
Sure.
Do you have the time? All right. We're on. Our guest here today is General Major Mari Edler, and Edner, I should say, E-D-E-R, Edder. And she'll stick with us. We'll be back on the other side. Stick with us, folks, here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN.
This Find Your Forever Home for Teddy's Friends is brought to us by the Cantiani Insurance with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at CantianiAgency.com. This week's candidate comes to us from the Boston Animal Rescue League. Meet Tyson. This handsome 90-pound guy is about 5 years old and he's neutered, a pit bull and terrier. And he came to the shelter when his owner passed away. This friendly goofball is looking for an active home that can provide him with plenty of exercise. He is strong and can play a little rough sometimes, so ideally he would need an experienced dog owner. And to go to a teen adult only home, he could potentially go to a home with another dog that can handle his high energy. He loves running around the yard and rolling around for his belly rubs. And if you think you are this friendly guy's forever home, please check out all the links and details at Teddy Goodpup's Facebook page. Find a Forever Home is brought to you by the Cantiani Insurance Group with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at 508-791-2088. Good morning and and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at actual cases, the law and lessons from the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and joining us this week is Sean Burke, president of the LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Legal Investigation. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
Well, welcome back to the studio. It's always good to have you in here, and here we are in Black History Month as we kick off February, and it being Black History Month, and our country is celebrating many contributions made from the Black community. Let me ask you this: how is LPDAM committed to providing services to the Black community?
Joe, February highlights the many Black Americans that have helped our country succeed over the past 245 years. Black Americans continue to be a part of our success today and within our future. It is nice to see us have the opportunity to learn more about our history through these designated times focused on specific groups and issues within our society. At lpdm.org, we are committed to welcoming all and providing services to all in a fair and consistent manner.
You know, Sean, that is good to hear, that LPDAM is committed to equality and fair business practices for all.
Thank you, Joe. Not many people know the first Black private investigator was a World War I veteran, and his name was Samuel Marlowe. He was an interesting person. He was the founder of the Old Black Screen Actors Guild. He was also the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Samuel Marlowe was much more than a private investigator. He was a trendsetter. As with Sam Marlowe, LPDM is filled with multidimensional individuals with a wide range of knowledge and discipline. This is what made Sam Marlowe good at what he did and LPDM members good at what they do. It is a major reason why we have the Find an Investigator tab on the LPDM website. It really helps the consumer narrow the search of qualified, licensed private investigators. More importantly, Joe, it's easy.
Well, Samuel Marlowe sounds like a fascinating man, and he broke racial barriers as well.
He really is, Joe. He is credited with being the first Black private investigator, but that is just a footnote to who the man was. A veteran, a contributor, a great representative of our industry. Whether it's a missing persons case, a cheating spouse, or a housing application verification, LPDM has an investigator for you. We take pride in our history, in our capabilities, and our association. We love what we do. Remember, you're in good hands with LPDM.
You certainly are. Sean, thanks for stopping by again.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us here each week on WCRN 830 AM and online anytime at lpdamcasefiles.com. And of course, you can visit us at lpdam.org. And you can find LPDAM on Facebook and Twitter at PI in Mass and anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean Burke, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Hi, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You know me from my radio shows and on-air contributions. But beyond that, I'm the president and owner of a second-generation private investigation firm, CIS and Associates, based right here in Massachusetts. The security and investigation industry has changed in many ways my father didn't even imagine when he began the agency over 3 decades ago. Private security and private protection is the fastest-growing segment of the private security industry. Personal private protection is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. At CIS, we have a specialized sector, the Template Division. This is the department tasked with the security and protection of individuals, often in cooperation with government agencies. But we offer highly trained and experienced body people for executives, government officials, and their families. If you are in need of a highly specialized service, I'd encourage you to reach out to CIS and ask for the Template Division. You can call us directly at 508-296-5445, 508-296-5445, or email newenglandinvestigators@gmail.com.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, Sunday edition, your Super Bowl Sunday for that matter. 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available. Dawn, sorry, I didn't realize you were on the phone earlier if you wanted to call back. Our guest online is Major General Mari Eder, who is a U.S. Army retired general, former Army Deputy Chief of Public Affairs, and the author of the book American Cyberscape: Trials and the Path to Trust. The link is on my social media platform, so you can check it out and go check out the book. In general, I also saying, I mean, you have numerous military awards and recognitions. the Vatican Award of the Night, Grand Cross of the Order, St. Gregory, the great from Pope Benedict in 2011, even in the Public Affairs Hall of Fame. I mean, how do you get into the Hall of Fame? that's a hell of an achievement.
I think some nice people nominate you.
That's usually how it works. So how many years did you serve active then?
It's interesting. I was active for the first 5, left and went into the reserves, and was in the reserves for the next 20 or so. And then my last 11, 12 years since 9/11 were active.
Oh, so you were in the reserves, then when 9/11 hit, you went active again.
When 9/11 hit, I was working in Germany at a U.S.-German educational institution for former Soviet bloc officials. So I was not in the U.S. when 9/11 happened. And people asked me if they thought I'd be recalled, and I said, no, I don't think so. So 2 weeks later, I was recalled and worked at the European Command Headquarters for the next 6 months. Was released from active duty, back to the U.S., and then recalled again.
Wow. That's a heck of a career. In all this time, did you get married and have any kids, or were you were pretty much married to the service?
Pretty much. No, my older sister has 5 kids, so I say she took my share.
Yeah.
You know.
In today's world. Yeah. My parents coming from a generation. I think my father, had there were 11 of them, but
that's
different
true.
generation, right? Different time. Growing up. What we're talking with the general about is, really trust in our institutions. Trust is unraveling across American institutions, affecting not only government, but also news organizations and the trusted sources of information. And I call it today, we have opinion casters, not newscasters. And it's very clear, and we chatted off air, and I think I've shared this on air before, that when I was a young guy starting in this business and wanted to get into news and talk radio, an old-timer in the Boston TV market, met him at the Jerry Lewis Telethon, and people here, General, will know Chet Curtis. If you're of a certain age, you know who I'm talking about. It was Chet Curtis and Natalie Jacobson. They were actually a married anchor couple on Channel 5 here. And I met him when I was probably 19, 20 years old at Jerry Lewis Telethon, back when they used to do that in the Boston, the Prue Center. And he gave me advice, and one of the pieces of advice he gave me was, if you want to do news, kid, don't have a political affiliation. Don't go register. Stay, back then they used to call it independent. We've changed that to unenrolled now because there's an independent party. But he said, don't do that. You don't want anybody to ever be able to go look and see you're a registered Democrat or registered Republican or Green Party or anything and say that your news is biased or slanted, and that anyone listening to your newscast should not be able to tell your politics. And that was great advice. Now, obviously, I'm doing a show today that's all about my opinion. The whole show is about what I think about politics or how I read it. I go on other shows to be a political commentator, so I don't have to worry about that. That's not where I'm at. But in my newscasting days, General, I would defy somebody to tell if they didn't know me ahead of time to figure out my politics. And I think that's what we miss today, because I can be 10 seconds into a newscast and you can tell where this person's coming from. They inject so much commentary into a news story, and I just want to know the facts. And you said something about that. What did you say? You removed the adjectives or something?
When I read news now, I mentally remove all of the adjectives, just so I can just tell me what happened.
Right. Good trick. A good thing to do. Right. Take all that out and get right to the meat of the issue. It makes a lot of sense. We're talking again with General, and am I doing your last name justice? Eder?
It's Eder or it's Eder. It's a good German beer.
Okay, Eder. General Eder, who is our guest, 508-871-7000. And we do have somebody who would like to jump in here, General. So let's go to Joe in Worcester. Joe, you're on with the General and myself.
Yes, General. With all the agencies we have today since 9/11, or even previous to 9/11, the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and many other agencies that are monitoring foreign terrorists after 9/11, or even domestic terrorists after the Oklahoma City bombing and other atrocities that have been committed down through the decades. Feel we're much safer. I mean, we haven't had any domestic terrorist, any foreign terrorist activities really since 9/11 of an extreme measure, like that godforsaken day when the Twin Towers were destroyed. And we seem to have, through military intelligence and certainly through elite troops, have decapitated the head of Al-Qaeda, thankfully, in Pakistan. And I'm just wondering if you feel as though, based upon incidents over the past several years, the Al-Qaeda and other terrorist foreign organizations are less of a threat in many ways because key leaders have been assassinated or removed from potential positions to cause harm for not only the U.S., but even for Europe, quite frankly.
I think that what we see today is a world that's even more dangerous than it was before 9/11. Certainly there are numbers of challenges, and both from inside threats within the United States and from bad actors, non-state actors, other groups from overseas. We do a lot in tracing and tracking, yes, but there are lots of things we don't know. There's lots of areas in the world in which we don't have the ability to see what's going on. Certainly, I think that since 9/11, with the stand-up of some of these new agencies, that there is more oversight and more intelligence. And now that we have 17, and with Space Command now 18 intelligence agencies that coordinate better with each other than they did before, that's very helpful. But we also need to make certain that these agencies are not collecting data on average Americans. And that's something we have to be very vigilant about.
Do you feel as though, in some ways, the Middle East is more unstable given the unstable nature of Iraq? I certainly would never have favored Saddam Hussein remaining in power, and certainly his execution was a wonderful day for the people of Iraq and elsewhere. But I mean, in the distant past, we were providing armaments to Iran during the Iran-Contra affair, or there was alleged activities of that nature at that point in time. And we had the Tower Commission report, and we had that particular incident where, or even when we provided armaments to the Contras, the insurgents in Central America against the communists, and were able to intervene there during the days of Reagan. And but it seems as though we're trying to be policemen for the world, and we given the extent of terrorists throughout the world, the United States can't go it alone to address all these terrorists, quite frankly, throughout the world.
Not that I'm any expert in foreign policy. Well, I can tell you that America's presence in the world and the example we set through our democracy is certainly what leads so many people to want to come here and to be part of this country and to have the opportunity. One of my friends has a nephew who grew up in Sweden and went to the Swedish army. And even coming from a country like Sweden, said he couldn't believe the opportunities available to him in America. So many people want to come here because of what we have and what is present precious to us, and that is what we need to continue to keep. And I think we have to be very vigilant about how we're doing this in the future. You mentioned terrorist attacks. Certainly we see we're talking about cyber systems, and all of those systems, whether it's your insurance company or a school system that is attacked with ransomware, we see these occurring every day. So our communication systems are under assault all the time.
Big time. You know, you were talking, General, and thank you, Joe, for the call. You were talking about, the phones and the Fitbits, and just again, we are agreeing to these things, right? We're checking these boxes for terms of service. We're buying phones with GPS systems in it, and it's almost designed that we have to agree to this invasion of our privacy just to get a phone or be, to go along, to just be part of the infrastructure that we have come to live in. And, where our homes are loaded with, smart TVs that can listen both ways. And we're voluntarily putting Alexa or these dots or whatever they call into our phones that have microphones on them all the time. We know that, the computers sitting in front of me all have cameras on them. And if you have any illusion that you have privacy, that's kind of your fault, I think, at this point. I mean, unless you're that clueless, you got to realize, I don't know what the numbers are now, but at one time, the average person was caught on camera 38 times a day. It's probably much higher than that today. That was a figure that I had in the security business I have from a long time ago. We're on the line with General Eder, who is a retired Army expert was public affairs, and has recently written a book called American Cyberscape Trials in the Path to Trust, 508-871-7000, if you'd like to join the conversation. And Mark in Worcester would like to jump in. So, Mark, good morning. You're on with the General and myself, and you look marvelous.
And you look marvelous as well.
Thank you.
I have a question for the General. General, are you active duty now? Active duty or active duty reservist?
I'm retired now.
So you're not on active duty?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe you can answer the question, maybe you can't. If you're on active duty now, I hear that they're having a 60-day stand down. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes.
Does that mean that if you were an active supporter of Donald J. Trump, you attended his rallies, you were active within as a Trump supporter, does that mean you're in trouble with the Army? Or possibly could be in trouble with the Army? Could you enlighten me on that? I'm ex-military. I'm interested to know what the situation is there.
Well, if you're ex-military, you've probably seen some of these stand-downs before. And
I know the stand-down was during the Vietnam era, but that's 50 years ago. I don't know what it means now.
Well, we've seen them for aviation accidents, so it's take a day and review all your safety procedures. This stand-down...
I just want to get to the... I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to get back to my initial question. If you're active duty or reservist, and you're in the United States Army, during your stand-down, if they find out that you were a Trump supporter or that you attended Trump rallies, are you possibly in some kind of a hot water with the U.S. Army? That's what I want to know. Yes or no?
It depends on what status you were in.
What do you mean?
What I was telling you was in these 60
With your MOS
days, in these 60 days, every service has been asked to take one day during that time to take a look at their policies for rooting out extremism in the ranks. Do we have people who have extreme views that are possibly violent? That's what that is about. Now, if you went to the rally on the 6th of January, and you are an active member of the service and you were in a duty status that meant you were on leave, on your own time, on your personal time, that's one thing.
So they shouldn't be in trouble. To answer Mark's question is,
that's correct.
Just by the virtue of being a Trump supporter, you shouldn't be in trouble. But we're seeing such a cancer culture with this. I mean, we have members of Congress trying to classify him a terrorist. This is crazy, right? They're going after his businesses. This impeachment trial going on. I think that it's well within reason to think that the only reason they want to push a impeachment through at this point, General, is to stop him from the 2024 possibility of running again.
That could be. I think overall in our society we have a huge issue with rush to judgment.
Yes.
And incredible negativity and the inability to forgive, forget, and move on. We continue to rehash old issues and become even more upset about them each time we do that, rather than just that we're past that now. Let us go forward trying to exercise restraint, discipline, and hopefully a little bit more polite society civics as we go forward.
Yeah. And on that note, would it not be better for, or would not it have been better for Congress to not try to impeach someone who isn't even a sitting president? I mean, I don't even understand how that's possible, because what does concern me, General, is if Congress can impeach a private citizen, what would stop them from impeaching anybody who, say, might consider running for president? Do they have that ability? I mean, coming from a military point of view, how do you read that? Do you think that the citizen Donald Trump is even able to get impeached?
And one other thing I am no expert in is constitutional law.
Yeah. Neither am I. But form an opinion. I mean, it doesn't seem it. I just thought I'd ask where you're coming from on that. But getting back to the trust issue, the unraveling of that trust is one thing. And the other part of always the question that we have, General, right, is how do we fix the things? How do we get back on track? Can Congress ever get an approval rating of 50%? How does Congress get back America's trust? How does the media get back America's trust? I mean, I have a pretty good idea how the media could do it, but what's your advice and opinion in those directions?
We always talk about the media, even though we know there is no one the media.
Right.
It's not a monolith. There are so many different types of media. I think that we're starting down the path of seeing new types of media outlets, whether it's Substacks, newsletters, or we're seeing that in some other media outlets, they tell us what happened, what was said without the adjectives. And then at the end of the news piece, there are all of their sources, so that you see who they talked to, what documents they used. And if I want to read the entire document, whether it's the letter from the Secretary of Defense talking about the stand down or an entire ruling from the Supreme Court, I can see the whole thing for myself. Right. If I have time, which sometimes we don't. But it all needs to be there, and it needs to be open and transparent.
One of the
want to talk
Go ahead.
About privacy, there's a lot of things we can do individually with the technology we use. So I've switched off all of the location monitoring on my phone for any app. None of the apps run unless I give them permission each time. I've been on Ancestry and done some family genealogy. So if you do the DNA results and your Ancestry family tree is open, then should you post them? You're now giving that away. You're giving away your DNA history, your family's medical history. Perhaps you're going to find relatives you didn't know you had. So it might be a good idea to not keep that in the public eye.
Right.
If you have VPN for your phone, you've hidden your IP address. So you have privacy online and hidden your physical location from hackers. So there are some things we can do, including two-factor authentication. Is it perfect? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I still get emails and attempted hacks every day, as do most people. But we have to be more vigilant, I think, and less trusting, especially of tech.
Yes.
Because what we see is when it's anonymous, is that people are less inclined to act ethically, I think.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that, right? I mean, bullying has risen because people can, in comments, right, they can hide behind their screen and they can make phony profiles and things of that nature. So, yeah, people have, cyber nerves, which, they feel they can say things they would never say in person to us or in person to somebody. But before we run out of time, I just want to back up. You were talking about the alternative news sources and the source of this stuff. And I just want to point out that, especially all summer long when we had these riots going on and, demonstrations and so forth, I found that one of the best ways to see what was going on is there were a few reporters out there that if you followed their Twitter accounts, they were on the scene. And you saw them in real time, and they would stream what they were seeing. And you saw what they were seeing, what was actually going on, and it wasn't going to be the sanitized or the slanted version on mainstream media later that night. And to me, during the summer, that's what I was watching. I was watching a few, like Andrew No and some of these people that they were all over the place, and you were getting unedited, unfiltered. This is what is happening right now in this city, in Chicago, Portland, Minneapolis, wherever it was. And that, to me, was one of the purest sources of news because it wasn't going through news editors, news directors. It wasn't being approved by upstairs. It wasn't coming from flashy sets. It was real in the street, real in essence, I mean, reporters in a way, right? They're doing their thing, but you got an unvarnished truth line of information coming that way, and that was probably some of the best data that I could get during the summer when all that was going on. But we're
that is so true.
I'm sorry, Joan?
That's so true.
Yeah, it was
real
great.
Time, and it's not filtered, and there's no opinion with it.
Exactly, and that's the best, and that's always bothered me is, I watch a State of a Union or the State of the State or something going on, and then the talking heads come on and they tell me what I just watched. Usually when I watch the State of the Union address, I stop watching as soon as they're done. I don't want to hear what they're going to tell me I just watched. But we're running out of time, General. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Super Bowl Sunday and getting up early. I'm sure you were up anyway, but I appreciate it, and I hope that you'll come back again.
I enjoyed talking with you very much. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to come back.
Absolutely. Your door's open anytime. That's Major General Mari Eder, and again, retired Army. I want to thank everybody. Hey, enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday. Cam, have a fantastic time. Enjoy the game. Teddy and I are going to go have breakfast, do a little shopping, and then watch the game later on. Be back Thursday for Making Money Last, Political Thursday, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester. 8 o'clock. Girton